So today we are looking at the OUBEN pencil for the iPad for many different iPad models, including the Air, the Pro, and the Mini. Now, if you've owned any iPad before and you've wanted to use it for taking notes or making sketches, maybe even doing some drawing, then you've probably wondered which stylus should you buy for it. And I know what you've done immediately afterwards. Of course, you've gone straight over to the Apple website to check out no less than the biggest and the best, the flagship model, the Apple Pencil, only to find out that while it looks great, it does cost a whopping $100, and that's only for the first generation model. If you want to go up to the second generation model, which is a little bit higher end, then it's going to cost $129. I mean, it sounds insane, doesn't it? So it's only reasonable to wonder whether or not there is a cheaper alternative out there which still does the job well and which is therefore worth your hard-earned money. Now that is exactly where the OUBEN iPad pencil comes in. Now on Amazon right now, it costs a little under £25, or if you're in the US, around about $30, which is less than a third of the price of the first generation Apple Pencil. So the question is it actually worth buying this cheaper model, or is it missing a bunch of features that means that you shouldn't ultimately cheap out on your Apple accessories and maybe should spend $100 or more on something that is really going to deliver? Now, let me actually cut right to the chase and give you my take up front before we then get into some of the reasons. I think if you're someone that uses your iPad purely for the purposes of taking notes for short spans of time, then the OUBEN pencil is going to be a perfect accessory for you, and definitely not worth spending that extra money on the Apple Pencil. But if you want to use your iPad for more creative tasks, maybe you are a designer or an artist and you use software like Procreate, for example, then ultimately this stylus just isn't really gonna cut it, and there might be some logic for you spending a ton more on the Apple Pencil. Now let's take a look first at what you actually get in the box, which, as you can see, was actually a little bit scruffy when it first got sent over to me. Now you can tell from the box and the packaging that it does look very much like an Apple knockoff, with all of the white and even the font at the top which says stylus pen looks very much like they're trying to give you the same sort of unboxing experience. Now, when you actually start to open the box, you'll see that you do get a lot more than what comes with the Apple Pencil. The Apple Pencil just comes with the stylus by itself, but the OUBEN pencil comes with the stylus first of all, which, as you can see, looks very much like the second generation Apple Pencil. You also get a USB-C to USB-A cable, which is pretty short. And then you also get these 3 replacements for the tip of the pencil, which you'll obviously use while you're pressing it down on the iPad screen. Now let's take a closer look at the design. I think in general the design is okay, but you are losing quite a lot of features that you would get with the Apple Pencil. If you want to switch on the OUBEN pencil, then you have to go down to the bottom side and long press the end until you see some blue lights flash just below. And that's a little bit more inconvenient than the second gen Apple Pencil, for example, which, you know, you can just attached to the iPad and then you never actually have to switch it on. It'll just be working whenever you want to use it. Now I mentioned that it charges with USB-C, so if you take off the little plastic cover at the end there, you'll see the USB-C port, and then you can charge the pencil by plugging in that included cable. So you're not going to be able to get that benefit of charging just by attaching the pencil to your iPad, unfortunately. Now as for the case itself, it does feel like a pretty cheap plastic. I think in my opinion, it definitely feels cheaper than the Apple Pencil does, but it also still feels fine. It feels very comfortable to hold, and it doesn't feel like it's irritable on the skin or anything like that. It just feels pretty smooth and generally pretty comfortable. The OUBEN pencil also feels quite a bit lighter, I would say, than at least the second generation Apple Pencil, and it's just one of those things to keep in mind that because it is a cheaper product, it's not surprising that the build quality feels not quite as on par with Apple's version. And it just means that you're gonna have to compromise a little bit on the durability if you go for this $30 alternative. But in general, the weight I don't think is a problem. It still feels very much like a usable pencil. Now let's dig a little bit deeper into comfort and performance. Now I already mentioned that it's a pretty comfortable stylus to use, the OUBEN pencil, and I think that's true. I think the fact that you've got this straight edge down the side, mimicking the design of the second generation Apple Pencil, is nice. It means that it's easy to be able to rest on your index finger, for example, or just another one of your fingers if you are using it to write, which I always find comfortable. And therefore, I actually prefer the design of the OUBEN pencil even to the first generation Apple Pencil, which is round all the way around the circumference. The weight of the OUBEN pencil is also really nicely balanced, so I never find that while I'm using it to sketch or write, for example, that it's gonna topple over my hand and I'm gonna lose grip of it. So that feels great. But when it comes to performance and functionality, here is where it becomes a little bit more of a mixed bag, and you are gonna have to make at least one major compromise. Now, on the one hand, the OUBEN pencil works absolutely fantastically because whenever I've been using it, it always seems to have no more latency than what I've been used to on the Apple Pencil. It just is really responsive, and as soon as I write, it seems like the tech just picks up what I'm producing and everything is fine. However, what you do have to give up, unfortunately, is pressure sensitivity. So whenever you're using the Apple Pencil, you can press down with any thickness of brush that you've selected, and if you press harder, you're gonna get a thicker stroke as a result, and if you press lighter, then the stroke is gonna be thinner. And with other types of brush strokes in apps that give you a little bit more choice, you can also press harder in order to produce a darker color, and then lighter without as much pressure as well. With the OUBEN pencil though, you lose all of that functionality, so whatever brush stroke that you choose, as soon as you select it, you only get one option for what's going to be produced on the page once you put the stylus down on the iPad screen. So no matter how hard you press, the thickness of the brush or the darkness of the color that you make just isn't gonna change. And you know, that is a big feature to miss out on if you are a designer, for example, and pressure sensitivity is really important to you. There's also some other functionality that you're gonna miss out on. So for example, if you are in the Apple Notes app, and you're using the Apple Pencil, you can double tap in order to switch between the eraser and the marker mode, which, you know, I don't use that feature very often, but it is maybe for some people a nice one to be able to use. But with the OUBEN pencil, you're just not gonna be able to have access to that feature. So if you double tap, nothing's gonna happen. Now, when it comes to connectivity, there's not that much more you're gonna get than this cheaper version with the Apple Pencil, actually. Things are pretty good on this front. So OUBEN's pencil connects via Bluetooth, so all you have to do on your iPad is switch Bluetooth on, connect the pencil, and then if you want to see the percentage of battery that's remaining, then all you have to do is slide to the left and you'll be able to see it right there. It is a little bit more of an inconvenient way to check up on how much battery you have than with the Apple Pencil, because with Apple's option, all you have to do is attach it to the side of the iPad and it will come up telling you what the percentage is immediately there. But it's also not a huge inconvenience, I don't think. And there is also still a magnet on the side of the OUBEN pencil, so even though you can't charge it while it's attached to the iPad, you still can attach it for carrying it around and just a little bit more of a convenience when you're traveling. Okay, let's talk about battery life last of all. Now, I know that these two options that I've been talking about are at very different price points, but it might be a deal breaker here for some people who are considering the OUBEN option because the battery life with the cheaper stylus is just not anywhere near as good as Apple's. So let's just take a closer look. Now, whenever I've been using the second generation Apple Pencil, I've never really had to think about battery life because it's always been attached directly to the iPad and charging while it's there, provided that the iPad does actually have power in it. So really the pencil's just available to use whenever you want it, and it's just a really convenient tool to have. With the OUBEN pencil, by contrast, I've only really been able to use it for about 2 to 3 hours at a time, and then after that time I have to then plug it in with the USB-C cable, and unfortunately charging from 0% to 100% takes about an hour. So once you've drained the battery, you then have to wait a pretty long time before you can use it again. So if you do want to use a stylus for several hours at a time, and you don't want the inconvenience of having to charge a lot of the time, then the OUBEN option might not be for you. Okay, so let's wrap up now. There are a lot of things that I really like about the OUBEN pencil. I think the design is pretty sleek if you can deal with the fairly cheap plasticky feel. The performance is good with no observable latency, and in my opinion, given the weight and the feel, it's pretty much as comfortable to use as the Apple Pencil. What is missing though, unfortunately, is decent battery life, some extra control functionality, and of course course, pressure sensitivity, which is probably the biggest drawback. So for around $30, should you buy it? Well, here's what my recommendation would be. As I mentioned at the start of this video, if you're somebody that just wants to take notes in brief segments of time, maybe you're a student and it's just between classes that you're attending or between meetings or whatever it might be, then there's really no point in spending $100 or more on the Apple Pencil. And the OUBEN pencil is going to be the perfect option for you. But if you need or want the extra convenience of long battery life, and you want extra control, especially in the form of pressure sensitivity because you're doing creative work like sketching or drawing, then go for the Apple Pencil instead. Yeah, it's expensive, but it's unrivaled in quality and convenience. So those have been my thoughts on the OUBEN iPad pencil. If you want to check out other accessories for your iPad, then you have to check out my video review of the Logitech Combo Touch, which I'll have linked over here, and there'll be other videos that I've made linked all around on the screen. If you enjoyed this video, then remember to subscribe and to leave a like. It's a massive help. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.